This episode is brought to you by the Arvada Center. The Arvada Center presents a revenge fantasy to sink your teeth into. Dracula, a feminist revenge fantasy, really runs September 27th through November 3rd. Fierce, feminist, and frightening, Dracula, a feminist revenge fantasy, really drives a stake through the heart of the patriarchy in this part horror, part humorous take. Tickets are available now at arvadacenter.org. That's arvadacenter.org.
Today on CityCast Denver, it's a big day for the local restaurant scene. Michelin is back with its 2024 Guide to Colorado. So we're skipping our usual Tuesday news roundup and making room for Westword's food editor, Molly Martin. We're going to dish on the surprising winners, biggest snubs, and what it all means for Denver eaters. Today is Tuesday, September 10th. I'm Paul Karolyi, and here's what Denver's talking about. Molly Martin, welcome back to CityCast Denver.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's a big day. Happy
to
have you.
Michelin Monday.
Michelin Monday. We should make that an annual tradition. Was it Monday last year?
No, I don't think it was on a Monday last year.
All right. Well, that's our first recommendation back for them. They've given us some recommendations. We got one for them. We're going to talk about the new Michelin stars. We're going to talk about who won, who lost, maybe some snubs. But top line, headline, Molly, were you surprised by the announcement?
My biggest surprise was how few additions were made, period. Only 4 overall. Only one star wasn't surprising to me, but I really expected them to kind of suss out the Bib Gourmand list and the recommended list a bit more. It was kind of a low number last year, I thought, to start, and I think there's so many deserving places that could have and should have been on these lists.
Absolutely. So let's just list them off here. We'll dig into these one at a time. But yeah. So the big winners were for 1 star, added to the 1-star list, huge, the highly coveted star, Alma Fondafina from Highland. That's big.
Yeah,
that's
huge.
The big one. The Bib Gourmand, my favorite category for value. The restaurant that was added there was Mac Fam, the Chinese place on South Broadway. And then 2 got added to the recommended list.
Yes.
And it was Kawa Ni and what was the other place?
Brasserie Brixton.
That's one of those places I've heard a lot about, but I've never been.
Yeah.
I've never been. I mean, there's a lot of restaurants on this list, though. You have to really be a big eater to know these restaurants, which is why you're here. So let's talk about the first one. So everyone that won a star last year retained a star.
Yes.
That's Becken, the Wolf's Tailor, Bruto, which we'll talk about, Frasca and Boulder, Bosque and Aspen. Alma Fondafina, though.
Yeah.
Wins a star.
Right. Wins a star. They're pretty new. They haven't been open that long.
Less than a year.
I think it's one of my favorite restaurants in town, maybe even my favorite right now.
Wow.
It's so many other people's favorite. My very, very favorite part of it, which I've written about and which we gave a best of this year for, is that they have a really intimate chef's counter experience, but it is not a high-end tasting menu situation. It's a la carte. So you could go get a couple drinks and a couple appetizers at the chef's counter. You can even hit up happy hour there. And so you get that really intimate, interacting with the chef's experience that you'd get at a Bruto or, one of those higher end tasting menu places, but at a much lower cost. So that's why they weren't really on my radar for a star, because our first crop of stars was all tasting menu.
That's super
high
fancy,
price tag,
super expensive.
So I feel like this makes things interesting as we continue on this Michelin journey in the years to come of, it's a little more up in the air as to what can get a star. And I'm super excited for them. I think they're so well deserving. I think Johnny Curiel's a really talented chef and really passionate about what he does, and they have a great team. And so I think it was a great pick by them, but it was a surprise for me for sure, just based off last year's picks.
Yeah, I remember I was reading your article of predictions last week.
Yeah.
You were predicting that no new restaurants would win a star.
Yeah. So I'm happy. Anyway. I'm really happy about that one.
Oh, yeah, it's great for them. I can't wait to hear what they say. I was following on Instagram this morning. They were just super excited, over the moon, which is nice. But you mentioned the meaning of this Michelin journey that we're on. So this is year 2. We have this new star for Alma Fondafina. What are you thinking about Michelin, in general in year 2, looking at who won this year?
Yeah,
and,
I mean,
how it's been working?
I've been using the word mystifying a lot this morning. No one, I'm talking to other people, restaurant owners, other people, food writers, people in the industry, and no one can really quite get a handle on how they're deciding where they're checking out and what's making the cut. And we can get to snubs later, but really a lot based on, why are these places being left off? Like, it's confusing. And, throwing this non-tasting menu place in the star mix. What is the difference between a bib gourmand and a recommended? I mean, the lines are very blurry. Michelin is kind of famously secretive. So I don't know. I think it's still overall, a positive thing for the whole restaurant scene and Colorado being, known more as a culinary destination. But yeah, it's still a bit mystifying.
Well, let's go back to Alma Fondafina for a second, because this is their big day, really. This is the big exciting moment for them. And the chef, Johnny Curiel, just tell us more about the food at Alma Fondafina.
Yeah, so Johnny grew up in Mexico. He has Mexican roots, right? He worked forever in the local restaurant scene for a long time with the Big Red F group, which is where I first met him when he was doing a special dinner there. And I was like, this guy is super talented. This is food I've not really had before, going really, really bold with flavors, being very unapologetically leaning into his Mexican heritage, but elevating it in really fun and exciting ways. And he left town for a few years and came back and was with the My Neighbor Felix group, where I think he was doing some really interesting work there, trying to elevate what they were doing, particularly when they opened their location down off I-25 in Arapahoe, was supposed to be kind of a more elevated steakhouse take.
This is Francois Safiedin's Lotus Restaurant group. And so that's View House, that's My Neighbor Felix.
Yeah.
And then they had that big legal dispute.
Yes, they had a legal dispute.
So this is so interesting.
It's
this restaurant is less than a year old, and half of their life they've been embroiled in this legal dispute with their former employer. Yeah. And now here they have a Michelin star, and he got this Rising Chef award from Michelin.
Yeah.
What a whirlwind year this guy's been having.
That's such a whirlwind year. Yeah. He's and so well deserving, such a humble, kind person on top of everything else. So it's been a crazy year for them, but to come out with this kind of validation. And then they also just opened Kazobi Fondafina in Boulder recently, and he's now working, they now have the space next door to Alma Fondafina, and they're opening a mezcal bar.
I can't wait.
So
I can't wait. That's a nice strip
more exciting things to come for them
on Highland. Forest Room 5 over there. That's a good bar.
Yep.
This is also a moment for upscale Mexican cuisine, I think.
For sure.
Michael Diaz de Leon won the star at Bruto last year. This was certainly his take. I know those two are friends. Yep. And then there's that other restaurant in Uptown, Chiquita, that just opened. I don't know if you've been,
I think we should also mention Chef Zuri Resendez Luchador that he just opened.
Oh, for sure.
It's definitely, it's such a cool thing to see in Denver, which has such rich Hispanic roots population. Always have we had these kind of thriving family-owned Mexican joints that I think people, consider, that's your budget place, that's your cheap taco. And to have these guys coming up and being like, hey, let's, Mexican cuisine should be in the same conversation as French, as, whatever you think is higher end. Why has it always been relegated to these lower tier, if you will? It doesn't belong there, and we're going to prove it.
Not anymore. Not anymore. I think that's gone now.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, that's one thing Michelin has meant for us. For sure.
Yeah.
CityCast Denver is brought to you by Life Surge, a one-day live and in-person experience coming to Denver on Saturday, September 21st. Life Surge is where local Christians gather to learn about growing their financial impact. This all-day event starts at 8:30 a.m. and will feature nationally renowned speakers, musicians, and business leaders like Tim Tebow, the two-time national football champion, Nick Vujicic, the world's #1 motivational speaker, Elizabeth Hasselbeck, TV personality and show host, pastor-author Craig Groeschel, and Marcus Lemonis, the star of CNBC's The Prophet. Music will be provided by the Grammy-nominated Christian worship collective Bethel Music. The Magnus Arena has known inspiration, but nothing like this. A Life Surge event is a must-see, and tickets are available exclusively at lifesurge.com/Denver. That's life, SURGE.com/Denver.
So Bruto, we're going to talk about Bruto.
Yeah.
Last week on the show, we had Westword contributor Jake Brown, who you edited a great piece from him where he had just this fire take on like a terrible experience he had at Bruto, which essentially was saying they should lose their star.
Yeah, and I think he was saying that you can call it a hard take. I think what I read from it, what I took from it was not I had a terrible meal, right? But he pointed out some things that if you are operating at a star level, and we're going to talk about things like, was I distracted by sustainability? Was I, I think overall, and I think Jake would agree with this. And I know him and his wife were there for their anniversary. She enjoyed the meal. But he, having experience in fine dining, thinking the way he does, there were some things that bothered him that I thought were very valid takes from a diner who had gone, paid full price, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, it was more talking about when you have a major chef change and a big shift in concept, how much time does it take for that chef to settle in? What are these inspectors really looking for? And when we say lose a star, I don't think either one of us, because I said it too in my predictions, it might lose a star because I think it was a pretty significant change. And again, we're still figuring out how does Michelin work? So they could have, in my opinion, lost a star. I've seen it precedent for it in other cities. And I don't think we were saying because it sucks now. I don't think that was the take. I think it was a major change and maybe it needs some settling in time.
Well, clearly not. I mean, that's another piece of this is this very, very short lifespan or to be awarded. Byron Gomez took over as chef at Bruto less than a year ago. Alma Fondafina gets the star for less than a year. And then the other restaurant we're going to talk about, also very, very new, Mac Fam, got the Bib Gourmand. These places are all very much in the conversation, very much part of the food media hype cycle right now. Where do you think Michelin fits into that right now?
I mean, someone made the comment to me today that it seems like Michelin's really leaning into these trendy, quote unquote, trendy places. I mean, there are exceptions to that, right? You got Frasca in the mix, which has just been a stalwart for 2 decades. They just celebrated their 20th anniversary. But they do seem to be hopping on board with bigger groups, let's say. You got the Culinary Creative has 2 or 3 spots in there now. So yeah, you're definitely, it seems to be trending towards these kind of trendier places.
Which is interesting.
Hip of the moment places. I
mean, that tells me there's money involved.
Yeah.
I mean, how conspiratorial I am about this.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? Is they're so secretive and what we all know is there is money being contributed by these tourism boards. I don't know what happens beyond that.
Do you want to clarify, actually? Because you emailed me after our show with Jake last week about how exactly Michelin chose to show up here in Colorado and do these reviews.
Right.
Can you explain what the process was?
Yes. Well, I can tell you what they told me the process was.
Okay, good. Let's start there.
They said that in 2022, they, on their own, they as in Michelin, did a kind of preliminary look at Denver's dining scene and decided, yes, there was enough here that was quality that would justify having a guide here. And then they went to the tourism boards and said, here's the pitch. You would need to contribute this, which goes towards the marketing fees for pushing this new guide.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. Colorado Tourism Office put into it. Visit Denver, the towns of Beaver Creek and Vail, visit Boulder. Visit Aurora famously, right, at this point did not. So Aurora was not included. Yeah, and once that was agreed to, then in 2023 it was announced that the guide was coming. And then the guide was out, I think within a few months of that announcement being made. And they said, our inspectors have already been here for a year. Dining.
Interesting. So basically this means that presumably these inspectors were also looking at other markets and decided Texas isn't ready yet.
Presumably.
Although Texas, I think they have since gone to Texas.
Yeah.
So that's some kind of validation, us versus other markets. That's interesting.
Right.
That's interesting for Michelin. But I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about this other category. My favorite category, the value category, the Bib Gourmand. Michelin gave the Bib Gourmand, again, all of the winners from last year retained it. So that's the Ginger Pig, Glow Noodle House, Hop Alley, my favorite, La Diabla. But the new...
one did not retain it.
Really? Which one?
AJ's Pit Barbecue.
Tell me about AJ's. Why do you think that happened?
I don't, I can't say why. I mean, again, like trying to get in the minds of these Michelin inspectors. And to be honest with you, I haven't dined at AJ's myself since they got the Bib Gourmand last year. So I can't speak to, I don't know of any major changes there. I can't speak to a decline. I do know last year when they were on that Bib list, it was the one I heard the most as being a surprise to some people. I think it just wasn't on a lot of people's radars. I think maybe barbecue even in general was a surprise category to see on there.
I wonder if the inspectors are local, if they're talking to the same people we're talking to.
I've tried to poke around, Paul.
I believe it.
any real clues about who these inspectors are, where they are based? I've been told that an inspector never goes to the same place twice, which then makes me confused about how they're judging consistency.
That's another thing about the fact that these restaurants are so new.
Yeah.
Like Alma Fondafina, less than a year, like a good restaurant reviewer, like they're probably not going to review a place in the first year.
Yeah.
And they're probably not
At
going to
least
do
by
it
the
within...
old standards, but...
Yeah, old standards. Very different world now. We're not talking about MacFam enough. We should talk about MacFam.
We should talk about MacFam.
Let's give
because
them their
they're
shine.
awesome. Okay, so MacFam is awesome. It was started by a husband and wife, Doris Yuen and Kenneth Wan. They moved here from New York City. Prior, when they were in New York City, they started doing pop-ups, mostly centered around Hong Kong French toast.
Which is so cool.
And then they came here. They ended up getting a space in Avanti. So they ran out of Avanti for a number of years, since 2020, and moved into MacFam, late last year. So they'd been doing their thing and kind of developing this concept. It was Meta Asian Kitchen, and when they moved into the brick and mortar, it became MacFam. And it's like all the work they were doing in the years prior to that have gotten to just blossom there. So cool to see them get awarded some recognition for what they're doing. And It is, again, really vibrant food that embraces their heritage, that pays homage to the stuff they were brought up on, but like with fun new twists that they want to put on it. And they launched a brunch, which I know they're going to put on pause for a few months and hopefully bring back next year. But
that's interesting.
Yeah, they're just doing a lot of just fun stuff, and I love to see people having fun in restaurants.
This is exactly the word I would have used for it too. I had such a great time there. The energy is really great there. So the other interesting thing about MacFam getting a Bib Gourmand is that we've been talking a lot about South Broadway recently.
Yeah.
And all these businesses that have left South Broadway for Englewood. So now South Broadway boasts a Bib Gourmand.
Yeah. And I think there's something definitely to these businesses moving further south on South Broadway to Englewood.
Sure.
But you've also had some interesting additions. Like you had the Beatrice and Woodsley space revamped and come back as La Forêt, which is another one of my very favorites right now. You've had a couple really cool cocktail bars open in that area. So there's some new stuff popping up even as some of the old staples are moving out.
Yeah, new character.
Yeah,
it's a dining destination.
It's always a city in flux, right? So
for sure. All right, let's do the fun stuff here, the snubs.
Yeah.
What do you? I've got my pick for a snub, but I want you to go first. What do you think?
I've got a long list of snubs, but I will talk about one in particular that I think is very timely today, which is Sapsua.
Yes.
Because they literally today, same day Michelin announcements came out, were announced as one of Bon Appetit's 20 best new restaurants in the country. They're just such a huge how are they getting overlooked? It's confusing. Other ones on my list.
So let's just take a second. This is a new Vietnamese place over on East Colfax in that Lowenstein Theater complex. Some people are calling it the Cultureplex. Formerly the Goods, formerly the Good Son.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I haven't actually been. Have you been?
I have been. I haven't been as frequently as I would have liked to gone. But what's really cool is, so it's owned by Nhi and Anna Nguyen. Nhi is Vietnamese American, and it's very much an homage to the foods, again, he grew up on, but like taking real creative liberties with it while still staying very true to the base flavors. So like on the menu, dishes are named like after the traditional Vietnamese dishes, but you're not getting that traditional dish per se, but you're getting those flavors in this interpretation through his, Vietnamese American eyes, which is amazing. And then also what Bon Appetit really paid homage to and what they highlighted in their whole overall best new restaurants list is these chefs and restaurateurs and owners who are really giving dues to every staff member, right? Like they list every single team member on their menu, really embracing the fact that it's not one chef or one owner who's guiding these places. It's a real team effort.
I love that. I love that. And with the conversation over the minimum wage and like restaurateurs like not being able to, make enough money to stay in the city, that seems like a really, I know there's tension right now within restaurants over that. So that's cool. That's cool to see. My snub, we talked about this at the Denver Food and Wine Fest when we ran into each other. Bo Peritko and Molotov Kitchen and Cocktails. I love this restaurant.
Me too.
I mean, maybe it's just that I have been enchanted by his great quotes every time he's in an article, but I think he deserved something here.
I agree. And the only thing I can think of is maybe the consistency thing, because he is so playful. And I've been there where I've had things that maybe didn't quite work right well, but it wasn't exactly perfect. It's not maybe as refined, I guess, as some of these others. That's what I love about it, and that's what I think Bo really brings to his food, is this kind of like controlled chaos, if you will.
Yeah, there's something about that, like balance versus like unpredictability. Sometimes as a diner, what I want is to like be shocked by like, oh my God, this is so much more bitter than I thought it would be. Or like there's a spice here I didn't expect in my vegetable lasagna or whatever it is.
And maybe Michelin leans a little safe.
Hey, we're learning that.
Yeah.
I guess. whatever this Michelin thing is.
Yeah.
Any other snubs you wanna shout out?
Yeah, I would love to shout out Lucina. We just talked about Chiquita. This is Lucina was that team's first restaurant doing like pan Latin food in the Park Hill neighborhood. Again, just bold flavors, exciting food, interesting food, but like doing it for the neighborhood. Like I think they would be a perfect Bib Gourmand pick. They make so much sense to me. Wildflower, one that kind of was off my radar for a little bit, and I just recently was there and was reminded of kind of how special what they're doing is, and I think it's a cool under the radar spot that should be considered.
That? I don't know that one
It is
at all.
inside the Lifehouse Hotel in the Highland neighborhood, so I think it gets kind of overlooked because of that, but it's doing
I've been
some
overlooking
really
it.
fun stuff over there. Spoontino is one that has just, I think, been a favorite in Denver to so many people for years, and doing such cool, interesting Italian fare with a bit of like Indian flair thrown in here and there. Like, I don't understand why they're not getting looked at. I mean, I got a bunch written down. And then you could also talk about these boundaries, location boundaries, Annette getting left out, Rootstock and Radicato in Breckenridge getting left out, Bin 707 in Grand Junction. I mean, so to call this a full Colorado guide, I mean, we all just have to know that that's not true.
Yeah, it's just weird. And also, like, if the whole model is about getting the tourism boards to help pay for marketing costs, like, I don't know if those tourism boards could change their minds and get back in.
Yeah.
And also, what kind of marketing costs do they need? Look at us. We're giving them all this free attention right now. It's so fun to talk about. Everyone wants to talk about this stuff.
And then, I also wanted to bring up, if I'm going to make a prediction for next year, based off Alma Fonda Fide getting a star, I think the next place that's not a full-on tasting menu concept that deserves a star is Restaurant Olivia.
I've heard a lot of talk about that place.
I think they'd make a ton of sense as a star pick. And also, and I didn't put this in my predictions, and someone brought it up to me, and it was a valid point. Green Starks, they're doing some crazy good things towards sustainability too. They've been doing some really interesting stuff in that field. So yeah, I'd love to see them get more recognition.
Well, let's leave it there. Listeners, I'm sure you all have your own opinions about who got the stars, who got the Bib Gourmands, who got snubbed. I want to hear all of your takes. Call in at the Michelin hotline. The number is 720-500-5418. Text us your name, your neighborhood, or leave us a voicemail. Again, that number is 720-500-5418. Molly Martin, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Paul.
On Michelin Monday. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why not take a minute to tell Chef Johnny Curiel about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter, Hey Denver, and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you then. To join me and to So we're skipping our usuals and making room